Today, we're going to step back and focus on the Tesla milestones that actually matter in 2025. Not the noise, not the headlines, but the inflection points that changed the business. Our guest has been on the front lines of automotive disruption for years. His 2025 article series, breaking down Tesla's FSD magic, real Robotaxi progress, and the true potential of Optimus, has helped thousands of investors understand what's real, what's hype, and what's coming next. What makes his work stand out is credibility. Elon Musk regularly comments on it and has reposted several of his deep dives on FSD and Optimus. That's rare, and it tells you something. With unsupervised FSD beginning to roll out and Tesla's robotics transition accelerating, this conversation comes at exactly the right moment for investors trying to understand where Tesla's heading next. Phil Beisel was a founding member of the technical team at electric vehicle maker Rivian and has also held various engineering management roles at Apple. Welcome, Phil.
Hello, Herbert. How are you?
Fantastic. So thank you again for joining me. The end of the year, you and I have done many shows through this year. And one of the things that you do best of most Tesla retail analysts I know of, you explain the technical. You ran the software division at Rivian, and you explain the technical for regular folks to understand it, really point out what it is that's really critically different. And again, like we said, Elon appreciates what you're doing as well. So I've been looking forward to doing this. We want to go through, you and I were joking, but you have been very, very busy because you've written many articles and they aren't just short. They're long. They're both technical, but they're also very, very easy to understand. So yeah, you did a lot of work. I appreciate that.
Well, that's great. Let's do it.
Yep. Again, thank you for putting together this deck. So this is your year in review. This is your X account. So folks, if you haven't been following him, it's at PBEISEL, P Beisel on X, X Apple, X Rivian. And then he has his link to all of his articles, or click on the article link. And I tell you, each one of these, they are really long form, but also evergreen. They can last long to explain what each of these is happening. So they're well worth the read.
Well, I was a little bit surprised when I put this together myself that I actually wrote 17 articles, which is definitely more than one per month. And then in addition to that, I wrote that chapter for the book AI Rising, which some of your guests are co-authors, which is a really fun chapter. I wrote the whole chapter on data, and it goes pretty deep in describing data for Tesla and Optimus is a central theme. And I just want to point out that the cover design is mine. No, I thought it'd be so cool to take a page here out of the past and then place our friend Optimus front and center. So yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. I think my hidden goal in life, which I probably don't really want to do, or just a goal, is to write a book. So I was super excited to be able to do that. And I think it started with all these long form articles. And in particular, the whole thing that got it going were the Tesla articles, and particularly the ones on FSD. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how far we've gone, right? From January of last year to January this year, end of December. And people still doubting, didn't understand it. I like the way you wrote the chapter on data, because I was just talking to Joe Backty about this recently, where people can see with their eyes, literally, this is like, funny. They can see, oh, this car has sensors. They have Lidar. That's more important than just, I can't even see the cameras. That is more important to them than trying to understand the brains.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that, well, Tesla has bigger brains. Well, you can't see it. How do you know? Well, because they have more data. You can't see that. And they don't understand how to translate more data. What exactly does the more data mean? And I think that's what I guess that's probably, right? You can tell me, but that's the common theme.
Yeah, let's jump to the FSD slide that I have here. So this is what started it. It was really the first article, upper left corner. I didn't know it was going to be part one. I just decided to write about. Yeah.
Now there's part 9, right? Yeah.
There's 9 parts, and by the way, that is actually a 24 article that when I started it, but the rest appeared in 2025. And then 3 of these here were reposted by Elon, the ones with his little icon. So the first
this
one, the
this
sixth one, and the seventh one.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't take any special significance to those. It just happened to be at that time. You can tell that the impressions on those, the view counts are extreme because
3 million, million, 3 million, 2.5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this, why did this start in my brain? So as you mentioned in the preface here, I was on Rivian's founding technical team. I spent 6 years there, great years, and I really focused on the software-defined architecture of the vehicle. And so the team helped design the hardware, the ECUs that supported the software, and my team also built the in-vehicle software, defined the platform itself, and then we went on and did the mobile app, and then we did the whole cloud ecosystem for data. And of course, that thing blew up. And after spending 6 years there, I decided it was my time to do something else. And I was always very much interested in what Rivian was doing in its autonomy project. And at that time, it was very nascent. It was a sister team. It was not. I did not run it, or I did not have. It was just a peer of mine in the organization, and it was very. I don't know. It was very. In those days, it was very. What's the right word for it? Immature and very formulatic in the sense that it was. Okay, we will put these sensors in the car. We will follow these guidelines. We will look for ASIL D compliance. We will do this. We'll do that. And it felt like that the person running at the time, which has absolutely nothing to do with Rivian today, and this is no comment on what Rivian's doing today, was really taking a page from how legacy approaches problems. Legacy automotive essentially thinks of all problems as integrating suppliers, the supply chain, whether it's tech or physical device, and putting it in vehicles. So this was all about finding the right supplier for Lidar, and and I was always interested in the problem, and I thought to myself, what's great? I'm glad I'm not in charge of it. What a hard problem to solve. What an incredibly hard problem to solve. And the bad news is if you don't solve it, lives are at stake. So it's a lot easier to work on all the other types of stuff in vehicle. And when I left Rivian, was the time at that time it was version 11 of FSD, and I was certainly interested in what Tesla was doing, but not terribly dialed in. And took a car out with not my car, but took a car out with FSD 11, and I was like, this is not it. This is not it. It didn't feel very. It felt very robotic. It felt algorithmic because it was. And then version 12 showed up, and everything changed. Everything changed in my brain, and I got very, very interested in what Tesla was doing because version 12 was an end-to-end neural network and a very, very different approach. A very different approach. So the history of this and the history of has always been that people would approach this problem from perception and planning. Okay, and they looked at them as separate, distinct problems that you would. Perception is about understanding the environment around you with the vehicle, and then planning is the trying to decide what to do. Like, how do you move the car forward given all these objects, the static and dynamic objects in field? And in case of version 11 FSD, the perception side was AI. That was something that they had been working on for quite some time. I was aware of it tangentially when I was at Rivian. But the planning side was algorithmic. In other words, still a piece of code written by engineers to make it's like a largest decision tree of your life, trying to figure out how, if this, then do that. And it seemed, without me putting a lot of thought into it, Herbert, it always seemed very much untenable. Like, this is not how you couldn't solve the problem this way. And then all of a sudden, version 12 came out, drove a car with version 12, and it became clear to me that it was just a matter of time that we were on a path to convergence, and Tesla would solve autonomy with a vision-based approach and a big brain. And it was always about, in my mind, that it wasn't about, like, I think in the early days of Rivian, I felt it was like the conversation was always about the sensor, the sensor, the sensor. And it's such a poor way of looking at it. And I'm not talking about current day Rivian. I'm talking about years and years ago. And all automotive was thinking of it in that kind of light. And it's really not about the sensor. It is about trying to interpret what sensor you have. And then of course you obviously select that, but then you really have to focus on what is the decision, how is the decisions being made, and Tesla had such a unique position because for starters, irrespective of whether version 11 was in field, they had a platform that had the proper edge inference on vehicle to support running these cars in a massive fleet. I don't know what, I couldn't give you the number at the time, but it's probably 3 to 4 to 5 million at the time, vehicles that could support running FSD, their version of FSD in shadow mode, and collecting enormous amount of data. Like the fleet, the size of that fleet, and it was characterized recently as that they're collecting, like, I don't know, so many 500 years of data a day or something.
Yep.
But even back then, even back in early 24, late 23, the overwhelming amount of data that Tesla could collect. And so I started trying to do something I've never done before in my professional life, which is reverse engineer something. It's something I consider a bit. It's not a happy place to be. You don't really want to be looking at a excellent engineering team and trying to figure out, from the outside looking in, how does this work? And as I started getting into the series, people would try to say to me, "Hey, I was at Tesla. I could tell you all this." And I said, "No, what I want to do, and I want to keep proper to this, is stay completely separated. I don't want any inside information. I'm willing to make the mistakes along the way." And my 9 articles through the course of the year are as much about me learning about FSD as anything else. If you read the first article, I was separating perception and planning into distinct actions. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 4th or 5th article that I realized that they have built an end-to-end neural network, which is a very different type of thing. And I learned along the way, well, what are they doing? They're applying a mixture of experts model. And here's how they're doing the imitation learning component. Here's where they're leaning in on reinforcement learning. Each of these things kind of revealed itself through, observation of everything that every Tesla engineer said in the public forum, including Elon Musk. So Elon, Ashok Goswami, and several others, little clues, little things that were said, were huge reveals to me. Like some of them were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe what this has opened a massive door. I now understand." It was an earnings call where Ashok said something about Elon was talking about this problem where they were saying, um, many of these problems are local problems. They were talking about, I think, snow in Boston or something like that. And Elon said something about that, and then Ashok said something about mixture of experts, and then it dawned on me like a 2x4 to the head.
Right.
Oh my God, this is what they've done. They've trained a weather-based expert that's mixed into the highway expert, mixed into the local street intersection expert. Yeah, so it's been a
And then
thing for me.
as you go into from one city to another city, if you go to from Seattle and then you go to Austin, then you go to Boston, all of a sudden it might add other experts that you don't necessarily need when you're in Austin that you might need in Boston.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that became clear. And then I think the final act where it got really exciting, and this is a revelation to Tesla too. This is not like Tesla started here when I started, but it'd be very when things were there was a reorg inside of Tesla. I don't know, circa in the mid year, and Ashok became the VP of all of AI at Tesla. And what became very very clear to me is that the architecture uh, of FSD is in fact exactly the architecture for Optimus, and that these
Yeah.
two products were converging in terms of, like they started with the notion of data and data pipelines, all like the infrastructure related stuff. But the neural network architecture itself, I guarantee, is almost the same. And I think what was clear to me was, okay, Tesla was sort of the big, it's like the older brother in the room, got all the attention early on, and still does for I mean, not still does, but is an important product for them, obviously. And then all of a sudden, this little guy came up, the little brother, Optimus, and at first it was the AI team was nascent and working on different formulations for that, and then finally it was clear to Tesla that these were converging things, and and I think what we saw was, I think the moment was a recognition that reinforcement learning was the key ingredient to both. So if to be clear about this, FSD, when you lay down the model, you start with imitation learning, which is taking hundreds of thousands, if not billions, of driving samples, having the system auto-label the proper behavior of the vehicle within those driving scenarios, small driving segments, and then training a system, an end-to-end neural network, both the planning and the perception side, to lay down this sort of, let's say, the base layer. It's sort of like, laying down the base layer of the home, and that's the imitation learning. But then to really, really tune it in scenarios, intersections, pedestrians, crossings, all these little things, you start to, you apply a kind of fine tuning to the model, which is about reinforcement learning. And what's really, really interesting about reinforcement learning is it kind of turns things a bit on its head. We think of this kind of classic model of training is here, it's in the data center, and inference, which is the use of the model, occurs on the vehicle. But to really do reinforcement learning, you have to simulate the vehicle's actual movements. And therefore, within the training cycle in the data center, you are doing an enormous amount of inference. And so when people think about what's sitting at Cortex in Austin, well, I will tell you that there are a heck of a lot of NVIDIA GPUs, but there are a heck training, but there's also a heck of a lot of hardware 4 boards that are participating in the reinforcement learning component here.
It's a real car. It's a real car in the training.
Yeah,
in Cortex supercomputer making decisions, and then you can go, oh, that was right, that was wrong, and then that's how you learn.
You essentially virtualize the car, right? So we've looked at several things that they've leaked. They've showed us, Tesla has shown us their great simulation, their ability to create real world simulation of driving data, but also augmentation simulation, meaning what they do is they start with samples collected from the field from real drivers, and they augment those intersections to certain different desired, like, in other words, imagine an intersection that's a fairly complex intersection that they've only seen 1 or 2 pedestrians crossing, but now they add hundreds of pedestrians, practically acting like random zombies, just to see how the system operates through that.
Can you expand on this one? Because people say, hey, it's great that Tesla has all of this data. They captured all these, millions of people like you and me driving around, and they've got that data. They're using that to train. But with simulation, NVIDIA has simulation. Everybody now, that has just skyrocketed how incredible it is. You don't need that anymore. You can just simulate everything. But I think I've heard Tesla say that actually you take those real world scenarios and you can't even predict the trillions of different scenarios that can happen. Yep. Then you apply a bunch of simulation to those scenarios. And then even that you can make it so that it's hard. It's not necessarily easy for somebody who just has simulation only to catch up. Is that
true?
Sure.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant by you're absolutely right. That's what I meant by augmentation, is that what you do is, real world driving scenarios present themselves in the most unusual of circumstances, and to sit in a conference room and try to dream up those scenarios is nearly impossible. The tail is infinitely long. And so if the vehicles are hyper focused on collection of those scenarios, and remember what I mean by that, there's code on the vehicle that is actually not only running the inference for either active FSD or shadow mode FSD, but it's also selecting the data segments that they want to push to the cloud, right? Because if they were to push all data, it would be so overwhelming they could, So what they're doing is they're looking for interesting and useful and strange scenarios that develop in the real world. And what they do is they bring them back, and some of them just go into their whole auto labeling process, but some come up. They're unique. They're different enough that they get engineering eyes on them, and then they're able to take those scenarios and augment them or apply reinforcement learning to them. So they could see, for example, a child's toy, thrown by a child comes across the road. What's the proper behavior for the car when that object comes across the road? In some instances, it might be go ahead and hit the object but if the child were to follow it, that's a different scenario altogether. If it's is it a live pet? Is it what are these things that are coming into? So by having all this data, they can then set up incredible scenarios for augmenting that reality. And I like the one I was giving a bit earlier was talking about imagine any intersection, a complex intersection, and imagine that it looks Third and Market in San Francisco. It's busy. It's like a 5-way intersection. It's very, but imagine now through their simulator architecture, they can add numerous pedestrians into that scene that do not naturally, and also give them random paths and kind of almost jerky behavior, unclean behavior. They can add snow or rain where it doesn't naturally fall in San Francisco. There's not like a lot of snowfall downtown. They could put freezing road surface. They could change the light configuration. They could change the light configuration in a way that makes it just go haywire, right? A red light turns green and turns red instantly. They can set up these scenarios with their templates of real world data. And they could see, in other words, they're looking at that and they're seeing the first version of something that's very strange, and then they're adding either much more difficult scenarios to that, and either they're doing it for just to see how the car performs in some version. They take version 14.1.2 and they say, let us run this through simulation through this intersection and see how it behaves. Or conversely, they, depending on the behavior, they then can set up reinforcement learning scenarios, which are running hundreds, thousands, or millions of different trajectories through that intersection, and reinforcing the ones that lead to positive and safe outcomes, and of course penalizing the ones that do the wrong thing, and then use that to train the system. So effectively, it's a very long way of saying that real world data is absolutely key.
And then so you follow this as they evolved, part 4, part 5. Yeah, the reason you write a new part is because something happened. Something happened. Tesla shows some new features. You learn something new, and then people are like going, "What? Huh? What is that?" And then you explain it, or you actually learned something really critically important about how the whole system works.
I mean, one example was, I think it might be the 6th article. There's a point where Elon or someone was talking about the fact that, we don't use the ISP, we do raw photon. And it dawned on me, what does that actually mean? And I dug deep into that, and I realized, oh my God, they're just getting raw sensor at the bare filter level. They're not ever building images that we see. I mean, you and I hear an amazing amount of, oh, what does it do in fog? What does it do in rain? Let me show you a picture of what that looks like.
And
that
you
is
can't see
not
anything. That's not what the system sees. It can actually see.
The system is seeing something much with greater saturation. The so-called images it produces aren't even really human consumable, right? They don't involve the processing of an image signal processor that creates these collections. And in fact, the raw data, they're not even doing these red, green, blue filters that are set up for human consumable images. They're doing like red, clear, blue, where they're basically just collecting light at the rawest level. I mean, to call it photon counting is sort of more of a marketing term, but effectively they are collecting raw light counts in red and clear and blue configurations, and then they're using that and sending it directly through the neural network. There is no image building. They're not sending an image. They're just taking these counts and sending it through and letting the neural network effectively try to decide what the reality is. So it's the weirdest thing is when Tesla says, well, it's a vision-based product based on these cameras. Of course, what it does to our brains is it says, oh, I know what cameras do. They produce these images, and let's take a look at 70 of them. And oh, look at these 50. They seem very, very difficult to navigate. And it's like, well, that's not what's happening here at all. And Tesla would probably do a great service if it took the raw images and tried to create something visual and sent them out and said, this is what the input data to the neural network looks like.
Sure.
And actually, there are a few out there that kind of represent that accurately. But so, for example, in that particular article, I talked about that. In another article, it might be the same article, I talk about, how does Tesla Tesla does use LiDAR, but not in the production system. How does Tesla effectively factor out LiDAR so they end up with a system without the complexity of LiDAR and, from a production side? And it's actually brilliant.
So that's a very good point. Let me jump into that a little bit. Everybody says, okay, extra sensors give you better data, but what Tesla has done is they drive their cars with just their regular vision cameras, and then they add LiDAR in some, before they roll out Robotaxi to validate did what the vision only capture everything that the LiDAR could, and if they go, yeah, we don't really need the LiDAR. That was the whole point why they add the LiDAR, is just to confirm, right?
So they do two things with LiDAR, and one of which they're not doing much of anymore. In the early days, when they built this vision system, LiDAR was the ground truth for
They call it ground truth
measurement, so that they could build
distance.
Yeah. So what they've done is they use a vision system to build a 3D space that instead of calling them pixels, they call them voxels. And this reconstruction of the space, what they've done essentially, so maybe LiDAR, like if you hit LiDAR off a stop sign, it comes back. LiDAR is incredibly good at millimeter, kind of level measurement. But what Tesla's done is it's used it as a calibration device. It's used it to calibrate the vision system. So Tesla's vision system is probably like, its accuracy might be, and I think it's actually quite true. What I'm saying is, instead of down to the millimeter, they're about off by 2 centimeters. Now, is that effectively fine? Absolutely. Absolutely. Think about
sometimes I'm driving without glasses.
There is absolutely no problem in driving where the difference between 5 millimeters and 2 centimeters has any real relevance, except such a close call that the system shouldn't have been involved in it in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're 220 centimeters from the stop sign or 220.0, whatever. So Tesla in a patent actually talks about the use of LiDAR to calibrate the vision system, the production vision system. Now, once you have the vision system, how do they continue to use LiDAR? Well, they have done they've used some solid state radar in these mounts to probably reinforce their own ground truth. Again, there's nothing wrong with LiDAR. LiDAR is a perfectly good sensor, but it can never be used on its own to solve driving, because one of the problems with LiDAR is, it has nothing like the entire driving experience in space was built for humans. So, for example, if you come across a light, it's either green or red. LiDAR can't tell LiDAR doesn't know what color is. It can measure distance to a light, but it doesn't actually know it's a light per se. It has to match it to something, but it can know the distance in a much more precise way than anything else. But ultimately, like what I talk about this in one of the articles where I say it's about the brain. And what I'm saying is, it's not like you don't get a better system. A human wouldn't drive better with 5 eyes than 2. It wouldn't, or 5 ears than 2, or something like that. It is what a better human is one that has better gray matter, that can interpret the scene properly and make split decisions, on a split decision basis, on a much more time split second basis. Yeah, I kind of messed that up. But this is what, good humans have, good human drivers, F1 drivers, the people, you couldn't take grandma throw her in an F1 car and expect a good outcome. Even with a lot of training, you wouldn't get a good outcome. It's some superhumans that are in these kind of cars. And it is not because in some cases their sensors, their eyes are actually good, but it's not their eyes. It's the entire processing behind the eyes. It's the entire visual cortex that's processing that data that allows them to make the right decisions. So, so this is what Tesla said. Look, in the world of sensors, there's a universal truth, regardless of how many sensors we have, is that the world of sensors is imperfect, and the more we add on the front end, the more complexity we have in terms of figuring out what is ground truth, who's telling us. If you have a conflict between 2 or 3 sensors, what is the truth? What is the truth? And if you think in every instance it's Lidar, well, then maybe you should just get rid of the other sensors, because what was the point in the first place, outside, color perception and so forth. So what I think Tesla has done is they said, look, it's mostly about the brain. Let's focus on the brain. And the brain is, in the case of what Tesla's built here, is an end-to-end neural network. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that the best brain has tuned parameters based on the most data. So, taking their advantage is collecting enormous amount of data, properly labeling that data, setting down the imitation learning, doing the reinforcement learning. You build the best brain. Once you have the best brain, you can use compromised or poor sensors and get better outcomes. Now, obviously, you can't use sensors that don't see. If there's no input, there's no potential for output. But I think that the whole idea here is that at the end of the day, they realized that the key, it's like part of the process, I think, was applying, you could say it's Elon's engineering principles, but you could also say it's sort of a standard one that you would learn back in the early days of your engineering training, which is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Keep the input as simple as possible. Focus on the training side in the brain, and bring to bear the things that you're good at, which is data collection and processing. Okay, and build that breast. If you think about a neural network, let's say that this neural network is similar to some other neural network, right? Some other company has the exact same architecture of the neural network for self-driving. The truth is they won't, but they're going to be different, the architectures of these neural networks. But let's just keep it simple. Let's stipulate that they're the same. And now within that neural network, let's say that we have 1 billion parameters, active parameters. Now, what are parameters? There's weights and biases. They're just numeric values. They're just numeric values at the end of the day. And that seems strange to us. It's a driving function that takes the input of these basically cameras, in the case of Tesla, the photon counts, and it outputs or actuates controls for steering angle, accelerator, and braking. And in the middle is a driving function, right? Takes this data, creates these outputs. That driving function, let's say it's 1 billion parameters, is just a set of numbers. And what makes one decision better over another is the difference between maybe a couple 100,000 of those numbers. It seems very strange to us, right? Like, okay, if we had set another 100,000 numbers, slightly more nuanced to, this number instead of 1.16 should be 1.18, and this one over here instead of 2.04 should be 2.19, and okay, hundreds of thousands more, and that would drive the car more correctly through that intersection. Well, that is the truth. So that is the brain of the vehicle. It is hundreds of thousands, if not billions of parameters, and having them tuned to the right numbers is the whole essence of the thing. It's the whole essence.
You need big data. Okay, so you explained that incredibly well. Appreciate it. That was good. And then the other one was you said that you realized that and they realized, and
Yeah,
clearly they've
yeah,
restructured the company that what they were working with autonomy is actually works well with Optimus.
yep,
And then you had this beautiful slide that you showed me before, which I think was very revealing. All the difference thing between driving cars and driving a humanoid robot is maybe one or two more sensors for Optimus, but hundreds and hundreds more outputs instead of
actuators.
just
Yeah.
gas and brake and steering. Now all of a sudden it's like every single finger, every single little angle here. That's like 22, and then the movement of
I
this
think
and all that. It's
we
like all this has
characterize
to be
that as we characterize that, Herbert, as something like driving had 2 degrees of freedom, and
right.
Optimus has a couple hundred or 100 degrees of freedom in terms of output. So yes, there's
Basically, it's the same input, neural net,
input,
output.
input mostly. So what's common? Input mostly vision,
Right.
output which is controls, right? So literally actuating controls. Now, of course, they're very different between a vehicle and Optimus. The middle, it's the
It's
same.
all the
It's
same.
architecturally the same. Now, are the mixture of experts the same? Of course not. There's ones in the Tesla system that might be wait for a gate to open, right? The Optimus doesn't need to wait for a gate to open. Optimus has the
Maybe.
take yes maybe but take something out of the refrigerator, special expert. So architecturally though, they're the same system, and there's a beauty to that. And I think an untold beauty of that is this, that because Tesla has the Optimus problem, which is in a sense much more nuanced levels of these experts, and people might call them skills, right? That those types of things that happen in the Optimus lab in terms of the architecture feed back into FSD. So what
And
that
they
means
both,
is
yeah.
what that means is that FSD becomes a more sentient or nuanced system. It's like, could you imagine a Ford Motor Company, not to pick on Ford, even though they're worth picking on, thinking to itself, let's build a driving system that emulates a robot. I mean, that's, or a humanoid robot. That's not even in the cards. But at Tesla, it's sort of a natural act because they see the products as huge degree of overlap. Yeah.
That's great. Let's go through your our Optimus articles and tell me
Yeah.
which ones you love the most. Or
Well,
yeah, these are little signals here. Elon liked this one a lot.
yeah, Elon reposted that one, and I love that article, and I encourage people to read that article. It's really that I talk a lot about Optimus being trained on real world data, and it's
Hmm.
it's really fun to think about what this bot can know by through its vision system. Incredible like examples I put in there about things you don't normally think of is it walking into a room and knowing it's a library, knowing instantaneously every book that's in that library. You could ask it where something is in your home, it knows exactly where that thing is.
Between LLM though, I can take my mobile phone, open up ChatGPT or Gemini, point it at a library, and it should still be able to do the same thing, right? So what's the difference between Optimus knowledge and that knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, it's at some level not a lot, but in terms of a modality of operation, I mean, Tesla, Optimus, you can send out to do primary research in the field without the mobile phone needs somebody to operate it, hold it, manage it. Optimus is a
Well,
is,
I've heard
is its
Elon
own.
say the big difference is physics, real world physics. And
Yeah,
so
yeah. Well,
think to show a video of, let's say, a baseball falling. It's another thing where if one human or robot drops it, sees how it falls and behaves, and then does a bunch more, then it just like you and I, right? Like when you and I throw a ball, I'm not calculating, I'm not figuring out the arc. I just like eventually figure out as a baseball, oh, grab it, and then if I do that enough times, I can instantly, without even thinking, know where to go put my glove and where my body to catch it. And he goes, that's something you cannot train through video, through, I don't know. Is that what is that?
yeah. I mean, there's part of that is that because it is an object that can interact with the physical world, that it can learn from the physical world, unlike a static device like a camera. So that's absolutely a true true kind of statement. Although I don't know in the early days of Optimus what's still to reveal itself. And I think what you're going to see from me in the next year are probably a lot more articles in the same light as I did on FSD, is kind of a reveal of how Optimus. What I don't know about Optimus is more than I know by far, and I'm looking to discover. And I think some of the problems are super interesting on how does Optimus learn on its own? How does it feed that back to the fleet? How does it do subfleeting? There's another article that I wrote about. I think it said Optimus on the network, and that's a really cool one because it started making me think about the subfleeting issues of Optimus.
What's the subfleeting?
The idea that if you take an Optimus and you put it to work in Walmart, you don't want that data to go back. Walmart doesn't want that data to go back to the central kind of training, because then Home Depot gets it for free, or just generally privacy issues about Optimus is in my home. It's not supposed to take my information, and then there's other types of things where Optimus brain can be moved around very rapidly. So there is no, in a sense, if you think about it, if you bought one of these things or at least one of these things, its brain is constantly synced to the cloud. And the article talks about how, you could then appear, you don't have to take that physical device Optimus with you. You could appear, you could rent an Optimus at your destination and
it's
literally
the same person. It's the same
activate
being.
Because and
history, knowledge, everything about you. Yep.
Everything that you put into it would never be lost, and therefore, and it's so the physical device, only is moments ahead of the cloud sync of that device. And that article talks about that. It also talks about central control in the sense that, Elon has said many times, I need an off switch. This is an important thing. You do not want, you don't want a company to lease these Optimus and be able then to use them in, illegal or incorrect way that is destructive. So there's a lot of that control that has to be put. But by the way, Optimus brain could also be transferred immediately to your vehicle. When we start thinking about our vehicle, we say, oh, they're going to integrate Grok. Well, think of it more as there's going to be this movable brain, and that brain is going to, like if you have Optimus in your home and you do a ton of activity with Optimus, and you've talked to Optimus about making sure, I want you to make sure that you have every book in my library in your brain, and I want you to think about this, that, or the other thing. And then you get in your car and you want to continue that conversation, and you don't really want to take Optimus with you. You can move the brain. You can move the brain to the car as well. And by the way, having those architectures be the same is very beneficial, because now you've just got more modules in the car that are essentially the reasoning elements of Optimus.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, Tesla's not just Autonomy and Optimus. SpaceX articles.
So here's a bunch of other crazy non-sequenced ones that don't fit the other two. One of the fun ones that I suggest people read is The Future of FSD Data on the far right. Yeah. That's very cool. I should have labeled it one of the magic of FSDs. It probably would have got more readers. That talks about like how FSD data can be applied to very, very different use cases than just the driving autonomy and stuff. Give me an example. Optimus in a city can map that city down to some level of precision that's literally insane, can follow criminals around the city, can discover criminal activity, can see emergent criminal activity, can see a cybercab, Robotaxi in a city being the data collector at scale. There's some example in there where I walk you through San Francisco and how persistent it would be on certain streets, could literally count for the city the number of new tourists in the city and not only new tourists, but tourists that have never. Where are they going? What have they done?
Yeah.
Have they ever come to the city before?
Yeah.
Um,
It's
some
crazy.
of it gets into interesting privacy issues, but some of it is very useful. Like somebody could report a dog missing, and the entire network could be activated to look for that dog.
Seconds. There it is.
Seconds, yeah, I found the dog 2 miles away here because
That's crazy. Okay.
the another great article here up the upper left, and one of my faves that I wrote because I wanted to know is I really talk about exactly how does Starlink do what it does, and
Yeah.
it's really it was an article that taught me about wow what a product they have. um, not just in terms of if it's calm
On
today.
Monday, yeah, Monday, Jeff and I spoke about a patent that Tesla showed that built into the car's roof could be basically glass or metal, basically, electronics that
Yeah,
does Starlink communication for cellular
I
data.
yeah, I suspect every Optimus and every Tesla vehicle will be on the Starlink network,
Yeah.
and they will be on the Starlink network in potentially two ways or some converging to a similar way, which is both through Starlink, kind of what I'll call Starlink native, which is
Hmm.
sort of the antennas that they use, the beamforming antennas to create broadband internet. But
Look at this. Yeah.
the other
Mm.
possibility is that they will be deeply in the mobile or 5G space, right? So if you want to talk about what we've seen and what we've probably seen in the second half of this year more than anything before is the actual real convergence of the Musk ecosystem
I
at
hear.
large.
I was going to say February 25th of last year, Tesla and SpaceX are
Yeah,
going to collide. That's February
yeah,
of last year.
that that one feels a little old, but actually also very prescient of what is actually happening. Like we
Yeah.
see these companies having insane overlap of potential. I think that one was talking about things like what could Tesla provide SpaceX.
Mm.
And at the time I
Yeah.
was thinking probably Optimus more. Now it's about chips for
Yeah.
inference in data centers in the true cloud,
Yeah.
data centers in space. Um, there's also an article here on inference, which as we start to jump into the next couple slides about Elon interactions, that's where it kind of got hot when we started
Mm.
talking about what I mean by hot is just a lot of interaction, where Elon started to talk about these chips. It became clear to me, and it became an obsession of mine for a while to think about what are they doing with this AI 5, 6, 7 series chip as they, the first one here. So the next couple slides are about actual interactions that Elon had with posts that I made. Some of them reference articles, some of them just talk. This one I was talking about the chip itself, and he was saying, yeah, it's become clear that all paths are convergent. So he was at this time. This was the early days where he's talking about shedding the Dojo team and shutting down the Dojo product and
Hmm.
kind of focusing in on the AI series chips.
Yeah.
And so he makes a comment here. Um, this one over here, I was tongue in cheek saying Samsung. This is when Musk indicated that they would have that exclusive deal with Samsung in their Austin fab. And I said Samsung has no idea what they signed up for. I think he felt the need to respond to this because I think it seemed like this could make the
Hmm.
Samsung executives nervous. And he said, no, they do. I had a video call with the chairman and senior leadership, and so what a real partnership would look like, and use the strength of both companies. Very good political answer on his part, so I like that. Here we're still talking about the chip, and this is a recent one where
Yeah.
I
Just
really
happened.
talk about AI5 being the platform chip. And what I was trying to do here is indicate that AI4 is not just a straight line incremental chip from AI5 is not an
It's
incremental chip from AI4,
it's a
but
brand new
it is,
foundation. Yeah. They should
yeah,
call it a new name. Yeah.
we almost should be calling it AI1
Yeah.
because I think that, and this is why.
That's what they should. Hardware 3, hardware 4, AI 1. That's what
Stop.
they should do.
Exactly, I
Yeah.
agree. But I think that the ship has sailed on that. But what AI5 is effectively is they've really taken a hard look, and they built more. They've powered up the chip team. They know precisely. When AI4 was built, Herbert, they didn't really understand how the neural network would utilize the chip. Like, okay, sure, there's matrix math operations, there's this, there's that. But now they know exactly, you think about what's happened here, they know exactly how FSD will work this year, next year, the year after, and so forth. It's suddenly come into clarity what the software team has built in this FSD thing. Let's say circa version 12, 13, and now 14. So now this chip can be much, much more tailored to the actual operations that software needs to do. And so there's this strong synergy occurring. And this chip AI5 is so important to the future of the company. It is. There are two in every vehicle, likely two in every Optimus. Some say one, I say two, because for redundancy. I mean, if there's a point where the Optimus does surgery, it's just as important from a fault tolerance point of view as a vehicle. So maybe not the first version, maybe some Optimus Plus version, but 1 to 2 per Optimus, which and then now there's this new place to put these chips, which is you could be clear in your mind that Musk will when SpaceX builds these data centers in orbit, that they'll desire and require AIX infrastructure.
I had a viewer suggest this, Phil, and I've been asking as many people as possible, do you think this is valid? His theory is that Tesla will actually not just do 2 chips per vehicle. He'll do 4 chips or 5 chips per vehicle, because they are basically data centers on wheels. They've got the cooling, they got the energy battery already attached, and then you use 1 chip for driving, and then the other one's used for data center.
It's very possible. You think about what's cool about, there's the difference between training and inference is worth mentioning in this way. Training tends to want, at least in terms of imitation learning, a large cohesive cluster operating in close proximity, meaning all the GPUs operate because of speed of light issues. They want this stuff to work, in other words, too much latency in the system. But inference by its design is, you use inference over and over again, whereas training, you kind of do one model. Obviously it's a big act, but inference is the 99% use case of these chips. So distributed inference makes a lot of sense. Edge-based distributed inference makes a ton of sense because it doesn't really matter that, all you need to do is take this user's request and send it to the inference device that through the network that you've created is closest, and closest would be the least number of router hops to reduce the latency. Send it off to that device. And so literally someone across the street from my house could be making a Grok query that goes to my car.
There you go. Thank you for explaining that. But it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. This is good. This is interesting. And then you got Robotaxi.
So this one here, I was talking about, how difficult it is to effectively build this thing, this Optimus bot, and then Elon opined Optimus is a hard problem in engineering design, especially manufacturing. That's been a theme of his, and it's a true statement. It's an credible product in terms of the complexity of building this product, and what we know is probably true at the end of the day is, if you can't build it, there's no use to designing it. So all things will come down to the manufacturability of the product to get it to be at scale. And I think Tesla, it's interesting, a lot of in auto, and when I first started in auto, there's, design for manufacturability is an important a thought pattern, but not really well represented in reality. Most auto division manufacturing different VPs, versus if you look at Tesla, Lars runs factories and Optimus, if you think about it. right? He's in charge of engineering, and he's in charge of the things that build the things that engineering develops. And just having that under one head really shows that a design for manufacturing isn't, especially if you think about how Elon thinks, it's not a secondhand thought. It's literally the first thing that comes out of the gate. So one of the cool things about Optimus is just that Elon already knows how hard it is to build things like it, because he suffered. Vehicle manufacturing is literally, I think, some of the hardest manufacturing of anything in the world, and he's gone through that door through great suffering. So I think he understands the complexities of that, and therefore, Optimus can succeed, because it can escape the lab at scale. Yeah.
Okay. And you got one on Robotaxi is live. You like
just
that
fun,
one? Yeah.
This is just fun to see that go. This is the big one, I think, in
Comp
terms
plan.
of, yeah, this is fun. I had characterized, using Musk's favorite kind of thing when he talks about video games, the final boss.
Yeah.
And the Musk 2025 comp plan is achieving the $400 billion in EBITDA. And just to put some perspective on that, in this particular post, which is not shown here, I talked about achieving $400 billion in by the way, that's 4 consecutive quarters, not necessarily line to the fiscal year, but 4 consecutive quarters is an unheard of thing. I'll give you two equivalents. One that's characterized here is that Aramco, the company, the Saudi oil company, the greatest revenue ever made by that company was in 2022, and I think it's like $235 billion, and this is post-COVID recovery, and they never saw that again. That's one yardstick. Another yardstick is if you take the current EBITDA effective earnings, EBITDA earnings of Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and add them all together, you still don't get 400 billion.
400 billion. Yep.
So what
He's got to create those 3 companies from scratch.
Yeah. So what does Musk say? He says it sure is a tall order. Anyone can buy Tesla stock right now and come along for the ride. There will inevitably be some bumps along the way, but with a truly immense amount of work, I think these goals. I think the reason he wrote it that way was this was the time. This was a couple weeks ago, November. So yeah, a couple weeks ago. But this is the time when there was a lot of hand wringing and consternation about his comp plan, making him a trillionaire, this, that, and the other thing. And I was thinking, how silly is that? If you believe that Musk can achieve these goals, then there's an easy solution to your problem: buy Tesla stock.
Yep.
Right. And if you don't believe it, just don't buy Tesla stock.
Yeah.
And these are some others that he got involved in. This is one where I was just talking about energy, and then the other one actually got a lot of that. I copied that when it was actually lower at 7.3 million. It went much higher. This is where I was noting that Grok was being given an unequal and improper footing in the App Store, and
by Apple.
Which is still true.
I love it. And then, of course, you're going to continue writing more.
Yeah,
this is great. Go to x.com.
It's been a great year, Herbert. It feels like everything's starting. Like, it's amazing to me to think that I got involved with this whole Tesla ecosystem. The thought of it, late 23. Luckily, started buying Tesla stock then, and through this 24, so much has happened. I mean, I don't think we should really take stock of that. So many things have aligned, and I think that the back half of it has showed us that word convergence is so key to the future of Tesla, the potentiality of SpaceX, of course, XAI, that these companies are all going to feed the others through different products, services, and structures that will just be a multiplying effect. Wow.
I think 24, 25 were building blocks, and each of these were, can they actually build it? Are they possible? What is their strategy? Now it's becoming clear that this one here is done. This one here is being built. This one here is just being thought about. But oh my God, now I get people are understanding the whole strategy.
And 26, it also be a very interesting year. It will be the year the realization of autonomy in the marketplace, both individual consumer autonomy, of course, as well as Robotaxi, and the scale out of Robotaxi is going to be an enormous mind F to people. Honestly, I don't think people understand what's coming here. The reality is that in the competitive space, all the competitors, best case scenario, are about $1 a mile cost, and Tesla will come. It literally has already at about half that cost. Model Y will be about 50 cents per mile operational cost, and Cybercab will be about 30 cents. And that means the difference between taking a ride downtown for $32 on Uber platform or $15 on the Robotaxi platform. You can tell who's going to win this, and especially since look what the second half of 26 will be about. The start of production. The most important thing in auto, Herbert, is the three letters SOP, start of production. That will happen for Cybercab, mid-year, and we'll start seeing Tesla build those things at scale. And oh my God, can you imagine those things? Literally, these gold cars traversing our cities, and then pretty much every highway. It will certainly, I've said to many people that while EVs are inevitable, the platform that will really bring EVs to be the inevitable reality is AVs. So it'll be autonomous that will really usher in. And I think the other thing that's interesting about this is that I don't think people, literally most people, 99% of everyone, really doesn't know that these Tesla cars drive themselves literally today. I've done since 14.2, I've done 670 miles on my car, pretty much intervention free. The only interventions I use these days are just to change the route. So this is quat extraordinary. And
Grok, you won't have to do that anymore.
No, exactly. I mean, that's just a small blip on the highway of them getting it right. But that's going to be absolute.
They did it. Can you believe it?
That is going to be, yeah.
They did it.
They have solved this problem. They have solved it at scale, and they intend to scale. And that's, I think, the last part is equally important. Is that people say, "Oh, look, Waymo's out there. It's got 5,000 units." I mean, basically, when they have multi-city market, which won't be too far, and Cybercab is in any production, even Model Y, 5,000 a week will probably be. They could add to the fleet 5,000 a week
easily. Yeah,
easily. So yeah.
Yan Tatsai, who's the Tesla AI executive,
great guy.
He said, "There's autonomy, and then there's autonomy at scale."
Yeah.
So sure, you might be able to prove that your car can do autonomy. Again, you want to compare apples to oranges, whatever, but no one can do autonomy at scale.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that's interesting about that is there's a lot to that statement. Autonomy at scale means a lot more. There are so many operational considerations to get an autonomy system operating where, a Tesla FSD system is drop the car on any road and let it drive to a destination.
Any road.
That is literally, there is literally no other player in existence today, either on a rideshare platform or a straight autonomy platform, that comes, within a couple football fields of that reality. And
couple thousand miles, because it's
I mean,
geofenced. Yeah,
Waymo's not it. That's a very difficult product to scale, and I think all indications show that Waymo is kind of going back to the drawing board on its sensors, and then can't get the robots produced.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, people should be reading your stuff. I mean, I wish more analysts did that. More Tesla Q people. They need there's just this comment you just made at the last bit here. That's exactly like just understanding the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, Herbert, what I'm trying to do is to show technical truth and reality. I'm not come at this trying to talk up Tesla stock. I own Tesla stock because I saw this reality emerging. There's a difference. There's a difference. It's not like, I see a lot of people talk their book on the basis of companies they own. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not even an analyst. I'm just an individual who has an engineering background, who loves engineering problems like this. And I see the reality of these things, and I try sometimes with a 2x4 hit people on the head and explain to them, I think you need to understand what's going on here. And it takes some time for people to understand it. But I think the more they read, we've entered, last comment, as a society, we've entered a much more technical landscape for almost everything that impacts our lives, and including investments. So if you don't understand a product company and you don't understand the technology behind that product, you're going to obviously think that there's no difference between Waymo and Tesla, and that there's no. But when you start to peel that back and gain an understanding of the technical components and what makes them different, all of a sudden you realize one can emerge as a outsized winner, not just a small, market share winner, but literally somebody that takes over the market. So
thank you for doing those articles, because that's what you do. You simplified that's complex into something that people can understand a little bit. Appreciate you. Check him out, Beisel, Beisel. Go look at all his articles, follow him, and we'll have him on this channel more times than we have last year. Thank you so much, Phil.
All right. Thank you, Herbert.
Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.